This may be the most important phone call you'll ever make.
I owed $87,000 in taxes. But listen.
Your tax problem is settled. You only owe $3,500.
What a great message.
If you owe $10,000 or more to the IRS or state, then you owe it to yourself to call this number. Let our experts help guide you through the process of negotiating a tax settlement. Call this number or go to tax10000.com.
We all know that movement is like medicine, but getting the movement you need to feel better can be a challenge. Now you can keep fit while you sit with QB, the world's leading compact seated elliptical. QB gives you active sitting, letting you burn calories and keep moving in an easy and low-impact way, all while you work, read, or watch TV. QB was named a top 10 gift by Time magazine and has been featured all over the world. It's whisper quiet while it works your abs and core, hip flexors, glutes, quads, hamstrings, and calves.
QB is a lifesaver for me.
Here's your answer to your problem.
I feel young again.
Join the hundreds of thousands of people moving more with QB. Call to find out how to get your QB with free shipping and a 30-day completely risk-free trial. You'll also get this QB workout mat free. Now keep fit while you sit with QB.
To order, call 800-289-5820. That's 800-289-5820. Call now.
Good evening and welcome to RFL. I'm Andrew Whitman, in tonight for Richard French. And on this St. Patrick's Day, we begin by talking about something green. The greenbacks that the American people are already receiving as President Biden continues to sell and defend his COVID relief plan.
The $1,400 check, child care tax credit. They don't like it because, in fact, their idea of a tax cut is to give the Trump tax cut where 83% went to the top 1% of the people in America.
During that exclusive interview with ABC's George Stephanopoulos, he also asked the president about the new report from U.S. intelligence agencies that says Russia interfered in the 2020 election by spreading misinformation about Joe Biden, and that it used people close to Donald Trump to help do it. While not named specifically in the report, there's rampant speculation the report is talking about Rudy Giuliani's efforts in Ukraine to smear Biden. The report says Russian intelligence even hacked into the Ukrainian energy firm Burisma in a likely attempt to gather information about Biden and his family. Republicans, led by Trump, used Hunter Biden's lucrative appointment to the board of Burisma as a cudgel against Biden, trying to paint the family as corrupt. But none of it stuck, in part because no evidence was ever provided. By the way, that intel report also says China did not try to interfere in the election, which shreds the Trump administration's consistent claims that the Chinese were tampering. On ABC this morning, the president made his first comments about Russian tampering in our election.
Director of National Intelligence came out with a report today saying that Vladimir Putin authorized operations during the election to denigrate you, support President Trump, undermine our elections, divide our society. What price must he pay?
He will pay a price. We had a long talk, he and I. I know him relatively well, and the conversation started off. I said, I know you and you know me. If I establish this occurred, then be prepared.
So you know Vladimir Putin. You think he's a killer?
Mm-hmm. I do.
President Biden also made some headlines for his comments about the sexual harassment allegations facing New York Governor Andrew Cuomo.
I know you said you want the investigation to continue. If the investigation confirms the claims of the women, should he resign?
Yes, I think he probably end up being prosecuted, too.
And you've been very clear. If the investigation confirms the claims, he's gone.
That's what I think happens. And by the way, it may very well be, there could be a criminal prosecution that is attached to it.
Governor Cuomo responded during a conference call with the press today.
If you committed a crime, you can be prosecuted. That's true. But what President Biden said was we should do an investigation. The question to President Biden starts with, do you think the governor should resign, or do you think there should be a review first? And the president said there should be a review.
We also have new developments tonight regarding the Capitol Hill riot. More than 300 people have now been charged, and the Justice Department says this is already one of the largest and most complex cases in American history. But Nancy Pelosi's push for a 9/11 type committee to investigate it hitting some roadblocks because of partisan bickering. Pelosi wants to focus on the riot itself and the violent right-wing extremists who stormed the Capitol. But Mitch McConnell says the panel should also look at what he calls political violence, last summer's racial justice protests, some of which turned violent. Also, both sides are squabbling about how many Democrats and how many Republicans should be on a commission, so we're in a holding pattern. We're also learning more about the tense days before the riot and disputes over whether or not the U.S. Army was willing to send in the National Guard to keep order. We're going to talk about that and more later on in this broadcast with ABC News political director Rick Klein. Another big issue facing the country and the president, the surge of migrants coming to the U.S. through the southern border. Of course, this debate is highly politicized, and Republicans are hammering Biden, saying he believes in open borders and his policies are to blame for the surge. George Stephanopoulos asked the president about that.
Let's talk about the crisis at the border. Some heartbreaking scenes down there right now. And a lot of the migrants coming in saying they're coming in because you promised to make things better. It seems to be getting worse by the day. Was it a mistake not to anticipate this surge?
Well, first of all, there was a surge the last 2 years, in 19 and 20, there was a surge as well.
This one might be worse.
No, well, it could be, but here's the deal. First of all, the idea that Joe Biden said come, because I heard the other day that they're coming because they know I'm a nice guy and I won't do what Trump did.
This.
Yeah. Well, here's the deal. They're not. The adults are being sent back, number one. Number two, what do you do with an unaccompanied child that comes to the border? Do you repeat what Trump did? You take them from their mothers, to move them away, hold them in cells, etc.? We're not doing that.
On the Hill, Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas appeared before a House committee for the first time since he was confirmed. Republicans repeatedly asked him why the administration isn't calling the situation at the border a crisis. Mayorkas responded by pointing out how the prior administration handled migrants who crossed the border.
Sometimes the tools of deterrence defy values and principles for which we all stand. And one of those tools of deterrence that the Trump administration employed was deplorable and absolutely unacceptable. And if we want to speak of language, then let me speak of language. I will share with you how I define a crisis. A crisis is when a nation is willing to rip a 9-year-old child out of the hands of his or her parent and separate that family to deter future migration. That, to me, is a humanitarian crisis.
Quite the change in administrations. And on the Senate side today, the Judiciary Committee held a hearing about the Equality Act. That bill passed the House this month, and it bolsters legal protections for the LGBTQ community. Only 3 Republicans voted for it in the House, so it faces an uphill battle in the Senate at best. Congresswoman Marie Newman is one of the sponsors of the bill. She shared her personal story during the hearing today, describing why it's important to pass this bill into law.
More than 5 years ago, before she had transitioned, my daughter, at just 14 years old, had experienced deep depression and anxiety. Unable to identify the cause of her pain, she told her parents that the only 2 solutions she felt would solve it was either suicide or running away. Heartbroken but determined not to lose our child, we enrolled in a local day therapy program. One night after her program, my daughter perked up in her chair at the dinner table, excited to share some news. She told us she had figured it out. Mom, I'm not a boy. I'm a girl, and my name is Evie Newman. Everything had clicked at that moment. She had been pretending to be something she wasn't. She wasn't being authentic. Still, as a mother, I knew the challenges ahead. My daughter would not grow up in a nation where, as an example, in 25 states, she could be discriminated against merely because of who she was.
Hearing a lot of stories like that from a lot of parents right now. Up next, the COVID relief package is in the books, but what's next for Democrats? After the break, a Washington Post columnist joins us to explain why he says the time is now for the Democrats to keep going and roll over Republicans in the process.
IRS open up.
The IRS is the most feared agency in the country and has the power to seize assets, garnish wages, and even put you in jail for back taxes and unfiled tax returns. Don't be a victim. Call Kick IRS right now and let us kick those IRS problems out of your life once and for all. Our powerful team of tax experts will fight hard for you and will not stop until we've resolved your tax problems on your terms. And if you qualify, we may even reduce or eliminate your tax debt altogether. No more sleepless nights wondering when the IRS is going to come after you. Take control of your tax problems today and make the phone call. We have an A rating with the Better Business Bureau, and we offer a 100% written guarantee, so there's nothing to lose and everything to gain. The consultation is free and the phone call is free, so pick up the phone right now and kick those IRS problems out of your life once and for all.
Call 1-800-284-0468 to get the tax help you need today. Again, that's 1-800-284-0468 or go to kickirs.net.
This is a national healthcare alert from the 24/7 Diabetic Health Hotline. If you, a family member, or a loved one has diabetes, listen closely. Now, regardless of your age, if you have insurance, you may qualify to receive diabetic testing supplies with little to no out-of-pocket cost. Get free delivery, free information, and all the paperwork is handled by our accredited suppliers for free. Call the 24/7 Diabetic Health Hotline now for details. Toll free at this number. But wait, there's more. If you call right now, you could get a meter upgrade. In addition, we'll give you a free pair of diabetic socks as our special gift to you. Regardless of your age, if you suffer with diabetes and have insurance, you may qualify to get free delivery of your supplies. Call now. We can help.
Call 1-800-972-0451. 1-800-972-0451. That's 1-800-972-0451. Call now.
Remember when taking a hot bath was the best part of your day? And for some, it can be hard and even not safe just getting in. Older bathtubs can be as high as 20 inches. Let's face the facts. As we get older, our knees and backs start to hurt us. Getting in and out of an old bathtub can be difficult and even dangerous. Jacuzzi Bath Remodel, a name you know and trust, as the perfect solution for you. We call it the tub-to-shower conversion. We'll remove your old bathtub and the need to step over a dangerously high threshold, replacing it with the safety and luxury of a low-profile walk-in shower. Advanced materials mean no more mold or mildew from an old bathroom. And all this in about a day. As a special bonus to you, you'll get a special extra safety feature for free. So please call now.
I don't think you have to eliminate the filibuster. You have to do it what it used to be when I first got to the Senate, and that is that a filibuster, you had to stand up and command the floor. Once you stopped talking, you lost that, and someone could move in and say, I moved the question of. So you got to work for the filibuster.
That clip was actually bigger than it sounded. For the first time, President Joe Biden, a 36-year Senate veteran and institutionalist, suggested he'd be okay altering the filibuster and requiring an active talking filibuster instead, like the kind Jimmy Stewart made iconic in the 1939 classic, Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. Democrats have been talking about it since their wins in Georgia in January, trying to make the most of their new majority in the Senate, but two Democratic senators, West Virginia's Joe Manchin and Arizona's Kyrsten Sinema, they've been resisting that push. So is Mitch McConnell, who promised to delay the Democratic agenda even more if they break the filibuster, comparing what he would do to the Senate to a 100-car pileup. Let's tap into our inner schoolhouse rocks for a quick reminder of what the filibuster is. It's a rule that requires 60 senators to agree just to get a final vote on any bill on any subject, even if that bill only needs 51 votes to pass its final vote. And right now, a senator can launch a filibuster just by saying so without doing anything else. Getting rid of the filibuster would lower that barrier to 51 votes or even 50 votes and a vote from the vice president, which would work nicely for Democrats because they control exactly 50 seats in the current Senate and the vice presidency. So getting rid of the filibuster would make it a lot easier to enact more of the Biden agenda, but would also make it easier for Republicans to do the same next time they control the chamber. But considering not a single Republican voted for the stimulus bill, which even Republican voters support, is messing with the filibuster the only move Democrats have left? For that, we turn to James Downey. James is the Washington Post's digital opinions editor. James, in your piece earlier this week, you noted that Democrats have Republicans on the back foot right now, and you urge Democrats to keep pursuing their agenda. I cannot repeat enough how big an obstacle the filibuster is to that effort, though we have tried on this program. So I wanted to ask you, explain to our viewers what Democrats can get done without the filibuster versus what they're likely to get passed if the filibuster remains.
Well, the one list is quite a bit shorter than the other. The Democrats certainly would like to try and pass an infrastructure package with reconciliation. Senator Cardin of Maryland was caught off on a hot mic saying that he expects basically that they would. They'll be using the budget reconciliation process, which they used to pass the recent stimulus package, to also pass an infrastructure package. But other than that, anything else is pretty much off the table until the filibuster is significantly reformed.
Considering there were no Republican votes on the stimulus, not even clear if anything can get passed with bipartisan cooperation. President Biden, as a longtime senator, is considered one of the ultimate Senate institutionalists, and he was on record not wanting to axe the filibuster, but that take changed while he was speaking with ABC. It seems like there's a small split within the Democratic Party on the issue. So how will Biden's change of tune impact Democratic senators, particularly Senators Manchin and Sinema, who have opposed changing the filibuster?
I think it certainly can't be underestimated, the importance of Biden coming out, the president coming out, the leader of his party, to say that the filibuster needs to be changed. He, on the other hand, is not calling for the biggest of changes. It's calling for a return of the filibuster to the talking filibuster that was in place when Biden was first a senator back in the 1970s. But of course, the pressure on Senators Manchin and Sinema from even the sort of the liberal part of the party, let alone the far left of the party, has been intense, and it will only increase with the president coming out in favor of some sort of reform. So that will make it even more difficult for them to continue to stand in the way of some sort of change. However, in some ways, Manchin is already ahead of the president on this, in that he has signaled openness. He said that it should be more painful, I believe were his words, for the minority party to filibuster.
One more filibuster question, and then I'll move on. Republican Senate Leader Mitch McConnell promised every possible delay and other obstructions if Democrats move on the filibuster, which is interesting because I thought Republican obstruction was the reason Democrats were considering getting rid of the filibuster in the first place. What do you make of McConnell's threats, or of their all but guaranteed vengeance if and when the GOP gets back in the majority? I think the proper reaction is the same reaction that Senator Durbin of Illinois had, which is, so how will things change? Senator McConnell has already become the ultimate obstructionist. It was under him that under him that Senate Republicans stymied President Obama again and again successfully. That really turned as much as the filibuster had been increasing in usage before the Obama years, McConnell turned it into a almost all the time filibuster, all the time approach. So McConnell's just sort of, he can make all the threats he wants, but he's already acting this way. It's not really clear what exactly will change. So you're urging Democrats to continue pursuing their agenda, and there's already a logjam in Congress about what could come next or should come next. There are bills that have already made it through the House, including the For the People Act, with lots of election protections and voting protections, the Equality Act, which prohibits discrimination. You still have the $15 minimum wage out there, immigration reform and the Dreamers, infrastructure. Which would you prioritize, and which of those have potential dangers for Democrats? I think I would, because they've already passed the House, I would prioritize the For the People Act, the H.R. 1. It certainly, in terms of the differences it can make with elections across the board. I mean, elections are, exercising political power. You need to have seats to do that, and we've seen with Republicans a number of measures either in process or already having been passed to restrict the vote, suppress the vote, to make it harder for particularly Democratic-leaning groups to turn out. So that would certainly be top of mind, especially considering that it's already passed the House. After that, I think it's mostly looking at what is popular with voters.
What do voters want? And I think infrastructure would certainly be on that list. I think a $15 minimum wage would certainly be on that list. It's been a very curious thing where you're seeing in the Senate a number, you mentioned Senators Manchin and Sinema. They've been very reluctant on a $15 minimum wage, even though voters from their own voters are actually in favor of it, according to polls. Again, and by significant margins, not just by all the Democrats in West Virginia are for it and all the Republicans are against it. I mean, we're talking 60-40 margins, which in this day and age is quite significant. So those would be sort of others that I would consider important. And obviously, immigration is both important because of what's happening at the border and also because of it's important to key activist groups in the Democratic Party.
You also wrote about ways that Democrats could pursue raising revenue. You talked about considering the wealth tax, raising top-end tax rates, even IRS crackdowns to, for people who are deadbeats or still owe money to the IRS. All of that is aimed primarily at top earners, but easy enough to spin that as tax hikes. Where should the balance be between producing results that the Democratic base is happy with while protecting the party against attacks that they're leading the nation to socialism?
Let's back up. The Republicans will attack any Democratic proposal as trying to return to socialism, regardless of how moderate it is. We saw this with, for example, the Affordable Care Act was a march to socialism. The Obama stimulus was a march to socialism. The Biden stimulus is a march to socialism. So that attack is going to come regardless. What Democrats, the best way to protect against that with Democrats, or the best way to deal with those attacks, is to focus on things that are popular with voters. And again, all three proposals that I mentioned that you quoted, wealth tax, the raising the top rate back from raising the top rate, and letting the IRS crack down on tax dodgers. These are all incredibly popular proposals. We're talking 70% of voters are in favor of them. So again, you're still going to, it's when you get into, say, something like raising taxes on people making $100,000 or above. That's where you start to run into issues, and that's where you start to, that's where it becomes politically more treacherous for Democrats. But I think as long as you're sticking to these proposals, you will, again, Republicans will make their attacks, but they're not going to meet with the approval of most voters, including independents and persuadables.
Finally, James, based on your other answers, I think I know how you're going to answer this, but what do you think's the bigger fear for the midterms for the Democrats? That they're seen as going too far, or that they haven't gone far enough and left their base disappointed?
I think it's absolutely the former. I think also, though, that you look at what someone like Barack Obama, if you go back to his memoir, which was released late last year, he continually laments, as much as he at points criticizes activists in the party who said he didn't go far enough. At other points, particularly in regards, at other points he does admit, he's very open about saying, I wish I had told Harry Reid from the beginning to get rid of the filibuster. They recognize, I think Democrats recognize that their fears about going too far after the Great Depression ended up hamstringing them and ended up hurting them in the long run. So I think that, again, people are going to reward you for doing too much rather than too little. And I think we're going to see that play out as it is in the fall.
James Downey, opinion columnist with the Washington Post. James, appreciate the time. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
And coming up, we'll get all the skinny on this from ABC News political director Rick Klein. But first, we head to Minneapolis for an update on jury selection in the case of the police officer accused of killing George Floyd. Then an attorney will weigh in on the jury process and more.
Attention. If you've had a hernia surgery after 2006 and suffered from serious side effects such as infection, chronic pain, organ damage, mesh shrinkage, or mesh migration, you could be eligible for financial compensation. Call the law offices of Wright and Schulte right now at the number on your screen, or visit meshjustice.com now. Ethicon, a subsidiary of Johnson & Johnson, has withdrawn its PhysioMesh flexible composite mesh from the market. Again, if you've had complications from your hernia surgery after 2006, you could be eligible for financial compensation. We can find out what type of devices were used in your surgery. Call the law offices of Riot and Schulte immediately at the number on your screen or visit meshjustice.com now. You deserve justice, and the call is free. And there is no fee unless we win your case. Call now for your free case evaluation. Again, call the law offices of Riot and Schulte immediately at the number on your screen or visit meshjustice.com now.
The first 3 months, we saved $4,100.
CarShield saved me over $6,000 in engine repairs.
I saved $4,100 out of pocket.
Amazing, amazing.
Customers everywhere agree. If your car is out of warranty, you need to call CarShield before your car has an expensive breakdown.
Without CarShield, there was no way that I could afford to get my car fixed.
An engine, transmission, or computer system breakdown could cost you thousands of dollars, but not with CarShield, America's #1 car protection provider.
CarShield saved us $4,000. That was great, right?
Yes, it was.
We're just happy with CarShield. They put a transmission in it and a motor. Who does that?
CarShield makes sure you don't have to pay for expensive car repairs.
The components that we're using are not getting cheaper. So nowadays, coverage is even more important.
CarShield covers most makes and models from 5,000 to 150,000 miles.
It's easy, affordable, and no long-term contracts.
And when customers realize that they're getting a $5,000 job for $100, they're excited. I've had customers who were so happy that they did break down into tears and cry.
We saved over $6,000 on a complete engine rebuild of our truck.
With CarShield, I saved over $3,600. It's a no-brainer.
I never have to worry about being taken advantage of when it comes to car repairs.
It's like having a suit of armor around my car.
Cars will break down, and those breakdowns could cost you thousands unless you call CarShield today and get the protection you deserve.
CarShield saved me in excess of $10,000.
And when you call, you'll also receive at no extra cost roadside assistance, towing services, and rental coverage.
If your car's out of warranty, believe me, you want to have CarShield.
Make the smart choice and protect yourself from sky-high auto repair bills. Call now for a free and instant protection plan quote. It's only a matter of time until repairs are needed. And once your car breaks down, it's too late. Call 800-858-4214, 800-858-4214.
We all had, to witness that excruciating video. And, it's painful and hurtful. But today, it's a huge step in the healing process. When I say healing, it's not just the pain that our family feels. Hopefully it's a healing. It's healing in the way that policing is carried on.
George Floyd's family speaking out after Minneapolis agreed to a record $27 million settlement to resolve lawsuits over the death of Floyd while in police custody last year. By now, you probably know most of the details, but we're going to do a quick recap before we talk more about the trial that began last week. Floyd was arrested on Memorial Day, accused of passing a fake $20 bill. Then during his arrest, police officer Derek Chauvin put his knee on Floyd's neck and kept it there for more than 9 minutes as Floyd laid there saying he couldn't breathe. Floyd, of course, later died at the hospital. That video was seen by tens of millions of people, and it spurred a massive outburst of anger and weeks of protests, some of them turning violent. A few days after Floyd died, the officer who kneeled on Floyd's neck, Derek Chauvin, was arrested. He's now facing murder and manslaughter charges. Chauvin and 3 other officers who were on the scene were all fired last summer and are all now facing separate trials. Jury selection is in week 2, and it's taking a long time. That's due to the nature of the case, but also because COVID protocols are slowing things down. As of yesterday, 7 out of 12 jurors were seated, but 2 were dropped over concerns of their impartiality in the wake of that settlement with Floyd's family. Cameras are in the courtroom, so we can show you the exchange between the judge and one of those now former jurors.
Late last week, there was extensive media coverage about developments in a civil suit between the city of Minneapolis and the family of George Floyd. Were you inadvertently exposed to any coverage of this, directly, indirectly?
Yes, I was.
Okay, can you tell me what you heard? Do you remember a specific amount or just that it was a large amount?
20, over 20 maybe. Okay. I think it will be hard to be impartial.
All right. Then I'm going to excuse you from this case.
Let's bring in our next guest to discuss. Mayo Bartlett is an attorney at the law offices of Mayo Bartlett PLLC. He's also former chief of the Bias Crimes Unit at the Westchester County, New York District Attorney's Office. Mayo, let's begin with jury selection in the Floyd trial. It is taking a long time, and the judge is now asking questions of potential jurors about the Floyd family civil settlement last week. Is the process being too selective when it comes to excluding potential jurors? And how relevant is the settlement to the criminal trial? Is it relevant at all?
Having done a lot of jury trials, I don't think you can be too selective. In fact, I think if anything, it's often not selective enough. So generally, you'll be in a situation where you may have 30 to 40 seconds to literally interact with each juror. And there's no way you'd ever make a significant decision in your life with that limitation. So in this case, I think that it's essential that people answer honestly, but also that they think it through. So you will have a position with respect to Black Lives Matter or Blue Lives, and maybe you support both, maybe you think both are bad. It doesn't mean you can't be a fair juror. It doesn't mean you can't listen to the evidence and reach a real conclusion just based upon the evidence that's submitted. So quite often people are excluded because they went to a rally or because they are supportive of, they don't think that somebody should have been treated a particular way. It doesn't mean that they've heard the evidence and that they'll be unfair based upon their previous information. Now, the settlement is going to be important because almost nobody doesn't know about the $27 million settlement. That being said, again, that has nothing to do with whether they committed a crime. In fact, the settlement itself is not addressed to the particular officers. So I think that they should definitely take the time to ask questions and make sure they get it right, that they afford the defendants a fair jury and a fair trial. But at the same time, I think that you should be able to find that there are many people who are prospective jurors who would be fine and would be able to sit quite well and decide the case on the merits alone.
The judge in the case spoke specifically about the settlement, saying he didn't see any evil intent or anything suspicious about the timing, though it is $27 million the same week the jury selection began. Do you agree with him? Do you also think nothing suspicious in the timing of that?
I would find it hard to believe that a municipality would reach a settlement with the intent of harming any particular defendant. And they have no skin in the game at this point. They've reached a settlement that has nothing to do with what's going to happen here. In fact, there are two different levels of liability. One is civil, which is preponderance of the evidence. The other one is beyond a reasonable doubt in the criminal context. So they really are very different. I don't think that this is something that would preclude the case from being heard. I don't think it subjects the case to a change in venue. And I don't think it's something that will prevent you from being able to find jurors that will be able to sit and be fair.
Lots of questions to the potential jurors asking if they've seen any reporting on the Floyd case or what happened or the civil settlement. How could any potential jurors in Minneapolis not have any idea what happened?
Well, what I would be looking for there is honesty. If someone told me that they had no idea, then I'd be a bit suspect of that person. And it wouldn't bother me so much whether they've heard anything. What would be my primary concern is, have you formed opinions? What opinions, if any, did you form as a result of the very limited coverage that you've seen? And quite often you'll hear 40, 50 seconds about the case. You might hear that 100 times, but it's the same 40 or 50 seconds. It's not substantive evidence. It's not sworn testimony. So ideally, if the judge does a good job of asking these questions and exploring it thoroughly enough and allows the lawyers on both sides to also have the time necessary to ask the proper questions, you'll end up with a proper jury that'll be able to be fair and impartial.
Mayo, we've seen constant reporting on the demographic breakdowns of jurors. How many men, how many women, how many black jurors, how many white. If you're the attorney for Chauvin, do you want as white a jury as possible? And given how much attention this case has gotten, will the demographic breakdown of the jury be critical to the verdict?
In this case, I can't imagine that it should be. I think that you have a tremendous amount of evidence, and that evidence will be explored by whoever's on the jury. And I don't think you need to be a particular color to draw a conclusion based upon what happened here. I do think that what we'll find is sometimes people expect that because the, let's say one party is black, that you're better off having a black juror. That's not always the case. In fact, I remember having a jury pool where everybody was black except for one person. And that was the person I wanted on my jury most of all. I was defense on this case. but this person belonged to all of the organizations that I look to when I want to find somebody who I think can really be fair. It's a person who's a leader, who I didn't think would be swayed by other people, and it's a person that's committed based upon their strong internal ethics. So I thought that they would not rush through the case. They'd take the time necessary and they'd stick to their guns. I think that they would also listen to other people. So sometimes you want someone who doesn't necessarily fit what you're looking for under normal circumstances. And in this case, the roles are generally reversed. Normally, you're looking for the prosecution wants people that they think are blue-collar workers. They like to have people that work for the telephone company, for Con Ed, for your municipality, that they believe will be more in favor of law enforcement. In this case, they may seek people that they normally wouldn't seek because the people in charge that are being charged are actually members of law enforcement.
I want to switch to a couple of other topics, Mayo. First, the Georgia massage murders last night. They were all at Asian massage parlors. Most of the victims were Asian. And we're in the middle of a period of increased hate crimes against Asians and Asian Americans. So it would be easy to jump to the conclusion that this was a bias crime, but police are already saying it's not racially motivated, not being considered a bias crime. As someone who's investigated and prosecuted bias crimes in the past, how common is that for an incident to have a lot of the ingredients that would make up a bias crime, but it's not one? And how do you decide if something is a bias crime?
It's much more common than people would think. However, what doesn't happen quite enough is that we get a thorough enough investigation to determine if it's a bias crime. And you hit a really great point, Andrew. You need to really turn every stone in order to determine what the motivation was. It's not what you look like or what your background is. It's why the person targeted you. Were you targeted based upon your race, your gender, your ethnicity? So when you look at these cases, all of the people who died were Asian women. According to the statement by this young man, from what I can see, he had issues that dealt with sexuality. Now, that doesn't mean that they're mutually exclusive. It could be that it's a hate crime for multiple reasons. It could be that it's a hate crime because he targeted women. It could be a hate crime because he targeted Asians and Asian women. But it could also be something where it's not a hate crime, where he has a relationship to these different parlors. Unfortunately, irrespective of whether it ends up being labeled a hate crime, it carries all of the same attributes of a hate crime because it would be an extremely unique circumstance where you have so many people with so much in common, and there's not that common link of hatred here as a motivator, at least in whole or in substantial part. And even if it turns out that it wasn't, it still has the same chilling effect in the Asian community because Asians that are going to work now do so with fear. If you're an Asian young lady, if you work in a massage parlor or something like that, you now are going to be with a heightened level of fear. And that's exactly the issue when we're dealing with hate crimes, because hate crimes select not only the individual, and it goes beyond the individual's willingness to address it or their interest in seeing someone prosecuted, because it now impacts anyone that's in your community, whether they are actually Asian or someone perceives them to be, and it impacts the entire society.
So then, Mayo, what's the best way to attack surges in hate and bias crimes, like the increase in attacks against Asians and Asian Americans? We can't possibly prosecute our way to a bias-free America.
No, and you hit it right on the head, Andrew. You have to do it through building relationships and also through treating people the way you'd like to be treated. And if you look at something and you see someone who's been targeted, if you're willing to be, as we say now, an upstander or an active bystander, to intervene to the best of your ability in a manner in which you feel safe doing so. And sometimes that means something as simple as dialing 911. Then you're doing your job, and then standing with the victim as a community. And if we start to rebuild community, which has been falling apart for decades now throughout the country, then we are in a much better position. Anytime you have someone who's targeted, especially through no actions of their own, an irrational targeting of an individual and or community, it's incumbent upon other members of the community to be good neighbors, to stand with those people, stand with that community, and let them know that they're not by themselves.
Mayo Bartlett is an attorney at Mayo Bartlett PLLC. He's also the former chief of the Bias Crimes Unit at the Westchester County District Attorney's Office. Mayo, my friend, thank you so much for the time. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Andrew. Good to see you. Be well.
And up next, we go back to Capitol Hill and get the latest on the filibuster, the Capitol riot, and more with ABC News political director Rick Klein.
robbers, bandits, crooks. They're all over your TV screen. But the biggest thieves are behind your screen. I'm talking about the cable companies. They charge monthly subscriptions, fees, rentals, and force you to take long-term contracts. Well, it's time to say goodbye to the cable guy, because now you can watch 4K Ultra HD broadcast TV for free. Introducing Clear TV's new 4K Ultra HD design, the Premium HD. Just plug it into your TV and start watching for free. You will instantly receive top-rated network shows, local news and weather, sporting events, and even Ultra HD 4K broadcast shows, all for free. Thanks to federal government mandate, all broadcasters are required to transmit a digital TV signal through the airwaves. The new Premium Clear TV lets you bypass cable or satellite to bring network and 4K broadcast shows directly to your television. Retract the antenna to keep it small or extend them for maximum reception.
Setup was so easy. I took my Clear TV antenna, plugged it into the back of the TV, and now I can watch my favorite broadcast channels anywhere in the house for free.
We're just off the coast here in the Gulf of Mexico receiving free network broadcast HD TV. Imagine all the free shows you'll receive at home. Basic cable and satellite services can cost you up to $80 a month. That's $960 a year and almost $10,000 over a 10-year period. Watch TV in as many rooms as you like with no additional monthly fees. Stop spending money you don't have to spend. Call or go online now and get your premium Clear TV 4K Ultra HD antenna for only $19.95. It's backed by our 60-day money-back guarantee. Order now, and you can add a second Clear TV free. Just pay separate processing and handling. That's a $40 value for only $19.95.
I can't believe I get all these channels for free. Plus 4K Ultra HD. Clear TV is for real.
This is important news for people who have taken Zantac or its generic ranitidine and then suffered from cancer. Zantac and generic ranitidine have been linked to cancers. Zantac and ranitidine contain NDMA, a known cancer-causing agent. If you or a loved one took Zantac or generic ranitidine and were then diagnosed with bladder cancer, kidney cancer, or any of these cancers, call Davis & Crump right now to see if you're eligible for a cash award and medical expenses. Operators are standing by.
Welcome back. In this segment, we're going to take you inside the Beltway, and for that, we turn to ABC News political director Rick Klein. We spoke about the filibuster, the Capitol Hill riot, Russia interfering in our election again, and more. Rick, last Friday, you and I talked about the filibuster and the possibility of Democrats eliminating or otherwise neutering it. Now, President Biden, speaking with your colleague George Stephanopoulos, for the first time signaled support for those changes, wanting a Mr. Smith-style standing filibuster. How does Biden's support impact the debate and also the positions of Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema?
Yeah, I think this moves the ball pretty substantially on the efforts to eliminate or reform the filibuster. Joe Biden's a man of the Senate. He knows of people in the Senate very well. He served there for many, many decades. And I think he doesn't technically get a vote, but I do think his influence is outsized on this. He is someone who's defended the filibuster in the past. Now, he's talking about what you might consider kind of minimal changes to it. You're just forcing senators to speak rather than just register their opinion. But even that change would change the way the Senate works. It doesn't change the vote thresholds. You still need 60 votes, but it would put a lot more emphasis on senators defending themselves if they are engaging in that kind of filibuster. So I think with some of the legislation coming up, particularly the voting rights bill that the House approved, so-called H.R. 1, you're going to see pressure grow on it. And now they've got the support of the President of the United States saying that there should be changes to the Senate rule.
We've had a couple of developments on the investigations into the Capitol riot. More evidence has come forward in reports that the Pentagon, the Trump Pentagon, either blocked or resisted positioning the National Guard ahead of January 6th. We're also seeing increased entrenchment in Congress on a 9/11-style commission to investigate. Republicans want to include last summer's riots in the purview of any commission. From your view, is there any hope for a deal in Congress on this? And if not, what are the mechanisms by which the American people will eventually learn the truth about what happened?
Yeah, look, there are big questions around the role of political leadership in this, who was saying what to whom. Some of those questions actually involve members of Congress who were witnesses as well as participants in the conversations behind the scenes. I think the commission is likely to happen. It may not have full bipartisan buy-in, and I think there's going to be people, maybe up to including President Trump and former President Vice President Pence, who decide that they don't want to participate, and there's nothing that really compels them. That, I think, is a loss. It's a loss for the history. It's a loss for accountability. There still are criminal cases, many of them, that are pending, or record numbers that in some cases the defense team is involving and invoking the statements of political leadership and in other individuals like Rudy Giuliani. So I feel like it'll come out in bits and pieces, but you're right that there's still a lot we don't know about why the footing was as light as it was on January 6th, why it took so long for the response, why protesters and rioters were able to take over that complex for as many hours that they did. And I do think there are questions about what the president, vice president, members of Congress, members of leadership, people having conversations with the White House were saying and doing in real time before and during the assault.
Rick, we just got a report from the intel community that Russia and Iran tried to influence the 2020 election, though Iran did so on a much, much smaller scale. Trump's director of national intelligence, John Ratcliffe, kept telling us China was doing it too. They weren't, according to the intel community. And the number one man named in the report is a Russian agent with a $250,000 reward on his head. He's a guy very close to and who fed disinformation to Rudy Giuliani. I assume, maybe I shouldn't, but I assume that more work will be done to protect our elections from foreign interference. So I don't want to ask you about that. I'm more curious, are we ever going to get an official cleanup and correction of the Trump administration? This is just one example. Pick a policy area. It seems you can find lies, mistruths, dangerous relationships, connections, and a whole lot more. Should the Biden administration be trying to set this record straight, or is this just something we have to rely on the press to report on from time to time?
Well, this report's from the Biden administration, although it was ordered under the Trump administration. I think a lot of these questions are going to fall with the Department of Justice. The new Attorney General, Merrick Garland, is going to have to answer some politically treacherous questions about what you do looking backward at the same time that you're trying to make policy and enforce laws looking forward. And it could involve statements like these. I think Biden and his team are going to want to draw a line between political rhetoric and things that are just part of campaigning versus things that were, obvious misstatements and falsehoods that had an impact on people during the time of the election and moving forward. But there is a lot of accountability. Look, I think there were so many stories that you and I talked about over the weeks and months and years of the Trump presidency that just sort of flew by. I don't expect there'll ever be a full accounting of every statement. I don't think that's plausible, practical, or probably even advisable. But there will be areas, I think, where you'll see investigators, congressional committees, legal proceedings that dig in and get to some of the baseline facts and expose where appropriate mistruths.
Donald Trump gave a primetime cable TV interview last night, and it barely registered on the newsometer. Joe Biden has yet to give a press conference, though one is scheduled. He's already been criticized for not having one yet. Which, to your mind, is the bigger story for our overall politics?
I am surprised there haven't been more opportunities to question President Biden. I was glad that he sat down with George Stephanopoulos yesterday. We brought that interview. I assume there'll be others moving forward, the news conference next week. I think the bigger surprise, though, is that when Trump speaks, that it doesn't seem to register the news scale, as you say. It was a phone interview on Fox, and there were times where he moved markets, literally, and maybe armies as well. He's the ex-president now. It's different. He's got access to media organizations, but it's not quite the same as it was when he was president. And I think you're seeing an adjustment all around. He has a right to give interviews when he wants to give interviews. It doesn't necessarily mean that that alters the course of events.
Finally, Rick, Republican leaders think there's an opening against Biden at the border. We've got migrant numbers that prompted a press event this week. I'm curious, it doesn't seem like it's been a huge story, but it is growing. How vulnerable is Biden potentially on border issues?
Yeah, look, Republicans are calling it the Biden border crisis. I think it's overblown and overheated to say that it's all his fault, although there is an element of truth to the fact that the change in policy, the more welcoming approach to immigration and immigrants is spurred and convinced migrants to try to make that trip. The direct message from President Biden in that interview with my colleague George Stephanopoulos was don't come. But it's also don't come now, not until the process is in place. So that's a nuanced argument. There's a bit of a disconnect there. And I think there is a vulnerability given the fact that Joe Biden is unwinding so many of the policies under President Trump, de-emphasizing border security, stopping construction on the border wall. And he's also stuck with a lot of facilities and procedures that were put in place by a president who had much different, almost diametrically opposed policy goals when it comes to immigration. So I do think it's an area that Democrats and the president have to worry about. They seem to be addressing it. I don't think they can just say it's Trump's fault. He's the president now, even if it's not fully his responsibility, it's his crisis.
Rick Clyde is the political director at ABC News. Rick, as always, thanks for the time.
My pleasure. Thank you.
And up next, we'll show you how Congress is moving to honor the police officers who fought to protect the Capitol while it was stormed by Trump supporters back on January 6th.
Are you over the age of 50 and considering buying an annuity in the next 60 days? I have some important news for you. Don't buy an annuity until you understand the pros and cons of annuities. Call now for this free book on maximizing your income in retirement. Annuity Do's and Don'ts for Baby Boomers from leading financial firm J.D. Mellberg. That's right, free. This book reveals little-known truths about annuities in simple-to-understand terms. Grab a pen right now, because we're about to offer you this free book that unlocks the 5 little-known truths we believe baby boomers and seniors should know before buying an annuity, and it's free. Call 800-851-7261. As a bonus, we'll also throw in a free annuity rate report. We researched numerous products and summarized rates and benefits of annuities, all from Silac Insurance Company. Call 800-851-7261. That's 800-851-7261. Call.
Help. When you fall and can't get help,
Help.
you will lie on the floor for hours or days in constant, terrible anguish, which often results in a tragic outcome. But with Life Alert, one touch of a button can get you help fast.
Don't worry, help is on the way.
With any of Life Alert's 3 emergency systems, help can be summoned immediately, whether at home,
I've fallen and I can't get up.
in the bathroom,
I've fallen in a shower.
or on the go.
Help! I'm in the park and I can't get up.
And batteries never need charging. Life Alert saves a life every 11 minutes.
For a free Life Alert brochure, call 1-800-215-6582. That's 1-800-215-6582. Call now. 1-800-215-6582.
Attention timeshare owners. This is an urgent consumer alert from the Timeshare Exit Hotline, a national company specializing in helping consumers legally get out of their expensive timeshare contracts. We're offering you a way to legally get rid of your timeshare. So if you're fed up with the maintenance fees that keep on coming and want to learn if you can terminate your timeshare legally and permanently, call today. Call the number on your screen today. It's a free call.
The police officers who fought to protect the Capitol on January 6th were, of course, outnumbered and overwhelmed, but still they stood their ground and risked their lives to defend the building and to defend our democracy. So Speaker Pelosi is pushing to honor those officers.
January 6th was a day of horror and heartbreak, but because of these courageous men and women, it was also a moment of extraordinary heroism. That day, the United States Capitol Police Force put themselves between us and the violence. They risked their safety and their lives for others with the utmost selflessness. And they did so because they were patriots, the type of Americans who heard the call to serve and answered it, putting country above self. Today, united in grief and gratitude, the House is honoring these heroes as we pass legislation to bestow upon them the Congressional Gold Medal, the highest honor this Congress can give.
And the measure has bipartisan support, including from Congressman Andy Barr, Republican from Kentucky.
The brave men and women who stood and faced danger on January 6th deserve to be recognized for their actions. Without their courageousness, many of us here today could have been seriously injured or worse. And when I say us, Mr. Speaker, I don't just mean members of Congress. I mean the staff. I mean the administrative personnel and peaceful visitors. I think I speak for all of my colleagues when I say thank you. Thank you to each and every officer that was here on January 6th. Your bravery will not be forgotten. The U.S. Capitol Police and those who protected us on January 6th deserve congressional gold medals.
Up next, this doesn't sound right. It says here, my Daily Show debut. We'll get to the bottom of this together next.
Years ago, my daughter called to say she was expecting our first grandchild. But I never actually heard her say that. And the first time my granddaughter called me Papa, I didn't hear that one either. Can you imagine? Oh, I know I lost some of my hearing, but I was embarrassed, too stubborn to admit that. For Father's Day a few years ago, Gina and Ryan bought me a nano hearing aid. And my precious Ryan, I love hearing her call me Papa. I love hearing everything again.
What if you not hurt by not wearing a hearing aid? You're going to have many more special moments in your life. Don't miss hearing a single one of them. Call Nano. Order your full pair of hearing aids for only $297.
1-800-259-1401. Make today the day you finally start hearing better again with Nano hearing aids.
1-800-259-1401. 1-800-259-1401.
I didn't know some Medicare Advantage plans may pay for dental visits. Did you?
I didn't know some Medicare Advantage plans may pay for transportation to my doctor. Did you?
I didn't know some Medicare Advantage plans may pay to have my prescriptions delivered directly to my home. Did you?
These and more are important benefits some Medicare Advantage plans may give you. So if you're eligible for Medicare, call us right now because you could enroll in a plan with some amazing additional benefits. Call now.
This is important news for people who took certain drugs for HIV and then suffered serious injury to their kidneys or bones. Your HIV drug could have contained TDF, an ingredient known to increase the risk of kidney disease and kidney failure. TDF has also been linked to bone fractures, bone density loss, and softening of the bones. If you or a loved one took Truvada, Viriad, Atroplus, Stribild, or Complera and then suffered from kidney disease, kidney failure, bone fractures, osteoporosis, osteopenia, or osteomalacia, call the lawyers at Davis & Crump right now to see if you're eligible for a cash award and medical expenses. If you or a loved one took any of these medications and were then diagnosed with kidney disease, kidney failure, bone fractures, bone density loss, or softening of the bones, call Davis & Crump right now to see if you're eligible for a cash award and medical expenses. Our first consultation is free, and we don't get paid unless you get paid. Call Davis & Crump right now. Operators are standing by.
Finally, a quick personal story. When I was leaving college in the 1990s, I considered careers in both news and comedy. I even applied for jobs on Letterman, SNL, even The Daily Show. And as you can tell from my work here on RFL, nothing ever came of my interest in those comedy shows until last night.
But the funny thing is that even while Trump seems totally uninterested in promoting the vaccine, he's very interested in getting credit for it.
The former president isn't staying silent, of course. He released a statement about the vaccine. Quote, I hope that everyone remembers when they're getting the COVID-19, often referred to as the China virus vaccine, that if I wasn't president, you wouldn't be getting that beautiful shot for 5 years at best, and probably wouldn't be getting it at all. I hope everyone remembers. I was just as funny as I would have been if I actually did work there, which is to say not at all. My thanks to Trevor Noah and the Daily Show staff. Since I was on your show, Trevor, we've got a seat waiting for you right here. That's all the time we have for tonight. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm Andrew Whitman. We're back tomorrow night, 6 p.m. Eastern for another RFL. Have a great night.